Well, good afternoon. It's good to see all of your, so tell my grandkids, your bright, shiny faces in all the right places. So, here's the place we should be this afternoon. So, anyway, I'm Senator Wayne Harper from Utah. I co-chair the Leveraging IT Investment to Strengthen Government partnership. With me is Representative Chris Perrone from Connecticut. What I'd like to do to begin with, I've got a couple little comments, and I'll have Representative Perrone welcome you, and then I'll introduce Dr. Goodnight, who will be our host here from SAS. New technologies provide a wide range of opportunities for governments to strengthen services and to improve our outreach and our operations. That's been critical. We talked on the bus about some of us in the legislature who have, embraced technology, others who want to embrace it, and others who still love the binders and the written word on the printed page, which now you have to really access through the computer to get that printed page. So we're kind of there. I mean, as we talk about this, we're this partnership that we're doing here, this whole program, is to see how we can better cooperate to partner with the business community to meet the needs of our constituents and meet the needs of the public. We've got talking a lot about effective data management, analytics, and things that make it so that we as elected and appointed officials can do our job better. NCSL partner projects like this one provide an excellent opportunity for legislators and staff to work together directly on issues with companies who are members of the NCSL Foundation for State Legislatures. For the Leveraging IT project, we're fortunate to have 5 partners with us today, and we'll go around and have introductions in a minute, but we have Esri, and I have several people there, Deloitte, Mob Advocacy, Hewlett-Packard, and of course our host, SAS here. Can I get people from, let's do Esri. Will the Esri people introduce yourselves? At least stand up and say who you are.
Hi, Richard Ledbeater, State Government Industry Manager.
Good afternoon, Russ Kuhn, Government Affairs for State Legislature.
I'm Christian Carlson, I'm the Director of State Legal Office.
Okay. Thank you, Deloitte. I didn't see it. Oh, there we go.
I'm Christian from Deloitte,
Thank you. HP. They're not here. Okay. Mob Advocacy. They here? Okay. And then let's have SAS.
All of us to stand?
Absolutely. Because we need to know who the people are. So thank you very much to SAS and all of our foundation partners here. Over the next two days, we'll have an opportunity to get to know these foundation partners better, take a look at some of the technologies. We'll have people from North Carolina here who will talk about some of the issues that they're facing and how they're meeting with that, taking a look how we fight fraud and abuse, and again, better customer service. We're looking forward to these technologies, and it's going to be really fun. Representative Perrone, let's have you make a couple comments, and then we'll have everybody introduce themselves around.
Senator Harper, I just wanted to say thank you to SAS and the partners for having us here. I think one of the importance of having it at a facility like this, beyond facility, it's really amazing, is just that it puts us really in the mindset of really some of the efforts and the focuses that are being made in the name of not only taking something like a very small category like big data. Really, it's really something that's going to change how we understand not only our constituencies but our states and our options and our missions going forward. But it's something that it requires all of us to have some kind of working knowledge with. Now, at the end of the day, that I think the dream for I think a lot of legislators and a lot of people that have to work within their communities and try to make their communities stronger is to be able to aggregate large data sets and take those and apply those to the challenges and issues that really matter to the folks at home, folks that put us here and that are working to make the world a better place. So I think that taking that, harnessing that data and therefore, the work that's being done by SAS and the partners here is so important to, what we're trying to do going forward. So I think this is just, again, a great day. Thank you for having us here, and great 2 days, and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you. Let's quickly go around the room and everybody introduce yourselves so we have a better feel. Most of us know each other, but Kevin, let's start with you. Yeah, stand or whatever, just.
Kevin McLaughlin with SAS. I handle government relations for the company.
Kirk Pepper, I'm a SAS contractor.
Denise Brinkley, I'm a state senator from Florida.
Matt Hudson, State Representative from Florida.
Martha Jane King, state representative from Kentucky. Ruth Ann Tutchaw, state representative from Wyoming.
I'm Greg Snowden, I'm Speaker Pro Tem of Mississippi.
Hi, I'm Caroline Carlson, and I work with the United States Health Foundation in our government office.
Tom Alexander, state senator for South Carolina.
Michael Vaughn, Maryland House of Delegates.
Good afternoon, Angela Williams. I'm the state representative from Denver, Colorado.
Dolores Kelly, Senator, Maryland. Mark Willis, SAS, National Committee,
Representative Ryan Kennedy from Rhode Island.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Atkins, State Representative in Minnesota.
I'm Lisa Blummeyer, I'm director of the Joint Commission on Technology and Science in Virginia. I'm Linda Pittsburgh from Texas, and I work in Legislative Council, and I'm the ISW.
Dan Schmidt, I'm with Wisconsin Legislative Council.
Deputy again, Desiree, Legislative Council.
Wes from the Northwest of Desiree.
I'm Rick Keene, I'm a retired legislator from California on the staff.
I'm Cassandra Kirsch, and I'm with NCSI.
Spear on Fishing again.
I'm Joanne Burkhardt, I'm with NCSL in the Denver office. I'm Marie Bowman with FACTS, and in the product marketing, I'm from Austin.
Greg Henderson from Green Raleigh, I head our global broad street intelligence practice at SAS. Joe Zilka, Government Solutions Manager with SAS out of Ohio.
Cindy Berry, work for SAS, state and local government, healthcare consulting, and South Carolina. I'm Kay Meyer, I'm from here in Raleigh, I'm an industry consultant, and I spent about 20 years in IT creating. Hi, I'm Carrie Smeriton, and I'm with SAS, and I handle the state of North Carolina. I'm Heather Cox, I'm with SAS, also supporting the state of North Carolina. I'm Vicky Matias from the state of Florida and from the state and local government. I'm Lynn Harbaugh, and I'm in charge of business development and operations here in Florida. SAS.
I'm Joe Aaron, I'm Lynn's secretary.
Paula Henderson, and here at SAS, I run our state and local government. Thank you all.
Spencer, State Local Government.
Thank you all. Again, I appreciate your attendance here. I'm looking forward to the agenda and the presentation, everything will be done today. You have packets in front of you. There's some information on the left side about some of the successful projects that have been done. On the right side, you'll find, and I think this is very important, very good, there's speaker bios from the people that will be presenting to us today, arranged alphabetically, so when each one of them come up, take a look at it. There's some note paper in there. There's the conference agenda. This is a very nice campus here. We've got about 5,500 employees here, 20 some odd buildings. I saw through Building W as we're driving around earlier, and there's others that are being developed. SAS is a great data-focused, data-oriented company, about 13,500 employees and around, 55 countries around the world, so there's a lot of stuff. Is Dr. Goodnight here yet?
He will be here in just a minute. Can I have one
Let's have,
logistics, if I can? You should see a non-disclosure agreement in your packet. This is for the data center tour. If you are sitting at a spot that has a folder, you got a non-disclosure agreement. If you don't have one, we'll make sure that you get one in the break. We want to get this completed. That's for the data center tour, and I'll confess, I actually had to check IDs on this. So when we do this,
yours or ours?
everything. So I'll take care of that during the break, and we get started for that.
How many states is SAS?
We are in all, Dr. Goodnight, we are in every state. We have a physical presence in about 27.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Dr. Jim Goodnight. He is the co-founder of SAS, and he's currently the Chief Executive Officer. He's been doing this since 1976. Agricultural background, and has moved into data and qualifying after that. He is, I really appreciate what he's done. You know, I don't have a lot of remarks on you, but all I can say is I really appreciate walking around and seeing calcite, lapis lazuli, azurite, calcite, pyrite, all those different things from around the world. In my backyard, my kids say, well, Dad, you're a rock hound, so maybe we're a little bit kindred spirits there. He's much more savvy and technology-minded than I am, but we really appreciate you hosting us here and everything that you've done to make data analytics and government more efficient. So I'll turn the time over to you, and thank you for coming.
You need to go up to the sixth floor where my rocks are.
I did.
This is just, oh, you already went up here. All right. Okay. Yeah, that got started about 20 years ago. I was up in the mountains and I bought 2 rocks in the store and brought them home. And I guess a year later we were out in Arizona and I bought some more. And then my wife got tired of them being in the library on her bookshelves. So she asked the builder that was, or the architect that was working on one of our buildings that I was going to move into to build some shelves down at the end of the room. So they did. And when I moved in, I had to take all my rocks out of the house and bring them over to my office. Well, there weren't enough to fill all the shelves, so I had to buy some more. And so it's gone back and forth. Buy too many rocks, have to build more shelves. Then the shelves are empty, you have to buy more rocks. So I guess 10 or 12 a year. There's a big rock show out in Tucson that's about the first 2 weeks of February every year. And dealers from all over the world bring all their rocks there to sell to the dealers here in the U.S. that are mainly there to buy for their shows and for their stores. So I go out with the dealer and we'll spend a long weekend out there and just go around from room to room in these old motels looking for rocks. So it's been a lot of fun. SAS got started, gosh, I guess our first formal release was in 1969. We worked at, SAS got started at NC State University, where we were part of the experiment station. Now, every land-grant university all over the country has an experiment station. And the function of the experiment station is to have a group of statisticians to help guide all of the agricultural research that's going on, to help design the experiments, and to help to analyze the experiments. Because you can't let a bunch of ag students design experiments. They'll mess it up every time. So you got to go to your statisticians. And I was in that group. And we were one of the first universities to go to the IBM 360, and we had taken a lot of the work that had been done before and converted it over to run on that machine. And then a lot of the other southeastern U.S. experiment stations decided that we had the best programming group. Let's just let NC State do all the programming and we'll just use their programs. So, you know, we had our first 14 or so customers right there. And 69 is when we announced SAS. And they all started using it. And then I guess back in 72, Nixon pulled the plug on federal funding for university computing centers, except and the NIH was doing all this funding up until 72 for all the universities. And Nixon decided he only wanted to support universities that had a medical center that had, or medical universities. So all of us other universities were cut off from the federal funding we'd had for so many years. Well, we went to our experiment station folks and said, look, how about all of y'all just chip in $5,000 a piece and we'll continue doing this work. And they all agreed to that because they were very dependent upon our software at that time. So they did, and they said, but we want you to start licensing it out to other companies, pharmaceutical companies, anybody else that would like to use it. And so from 72 up to 1976, we were in the business of selling our software from university, which of course was illegal. So in '76, we had our first user group meeting. The users actually put on this meeting, and we had 350 customers there, our users, and we were just went back with very swollen heads and said, "Hey, let's get out of the university. This thing can really grow. We need to leave." So we came to an agreement with the university and moved across the street. That was one of their requests, that we stay nearby so they could come over and get our help when they needed it. So we did that, and we've been helping the universities ever since. So that's how SAS got started. '76, there were 4 of us that moved across the street. And that very first year, we were just barely profitable, and we've been profitable ever since, and we've had revenue growth ever since. Last year, we had $3 billion, just over $3 billion in revenue worldwide. We've got 412 offices in 52 countries. And it's just, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. We continue growing. We keep investing in R&D. About 25% of our revenue goes back into R&D. You're going to see a lot of things, I guess, over the rest of the day and tomorrow that we're working with a lot of state governments on fraud. Our CJ Leads program is I guess the state of North Carolina estimates that their return on investment, they're spending about $7.5 million a year, and I think their total return is about $20 million a year that they can show in cost savings. Plus, they're able to get a lot more bad guys off the street than they ever have been before. Income tax, a lot of fraud there. Unemployment insurance, Medicaid. There's fraud everywhere, and we can help find it. So that's why we're proud of that. I guess Ryan is going to be talking a little bit about big data. We got into the big data and big computational business, I guess it's been about 5 years ago. I was in Singapore, and a banker asked me if there was any way we could speed up their risk computations. Their risk computations were taking them 18 hours, and they were using our software. And so I came back and talked to our risk people to find out what kind of computations are you doing that takes 18 hours. And they explained it to me, and I was able to understand. Well, after dragging it out of them after a couple of weeks, I finally found out what it was they were doing. And risk people don't like to talk. So anyway, we finally figured that out. And yes, it was going to take about 18 hours. That's about as fast as it could be done on a single processor. So I said, well, if there's no way to speed it up on a single processor, we're going to have to go parallel and use many, many, many computers in parallel. And that's how our beginning of working with really large data and large computation started. And today, we have some of the fastest software. It'll take advantage. If you want to have 1,000 cores or 1,000 CPUs you want to put on a problem, we can manage all of those in our high performance analytics. That 18-hour job now runs in about 12 minutes. So that means that instead of computing risk once a day, you can recompute it every hour if you wanted to. And a lot of companies are doing that. We've got some of our banks in Europe that are global banks, and every time one of the bourses close or one of the stock exchanges close, they recompute their risk so they can perhaps correct it before the next market closes if they're overextended. So what's making all of this possible is today's computers. Moore's Law, you know, everything gets twice as fast every 18 months. They're not getting quite twice as fast, but certainly the number of circuits that they're putting on the silicon is improving. This is the size of a chip today from Intel. This is an Intel Ivy Bridge chip. It is, the circuitry in here is 22 nanometers. That's, 1,000 times smaller than a human hair. I mean, you can't even see it, it's so small. Now, to make these things keep improving in performance, they're adding cores. A core is a CPU. It's the graphics unit, all built into one. And instead of a single CPU or a single core, This chip has up to 15 cores on it, 15 chips, 15 CPUs. And you can buy a server with 2 of these chips on it, which will give you up to 30 cores, or 30 processors that you can run in parallel, 256 gigabytes of memory, which is what we like to put on it. You can also add 16 terabytes of disk drives if you want to. And you can do that for about $12,000. And that's more computing power than most mainframes just on a single server. It's just incredible the way the prices have come down. And we are trying to take advantage of more and more companies and government installations that are moving to these Intel-type chips that are very, very economical. We call them commodity hardware. It comes from Dell, comes from HP, comes from Cisco, and they're the ones that are producing huge numbers of these servers. And I think you've got a tour of the data center later, and you can see these things just stacked up everywhere. There's servers after servers after servers, all running together. So, okay, Paul, that's about enough for me, I guess. I'm a programmer. I'm an introvert, so I don't talk a lot. So. But Brian, you want to come on?
Sure
up?
thing.
Ryan Smeedle, I think you're going to talk about big data, fraud, and things like that. So.
All the above.
Great. Great. Sure.
Why don't I start your video and then you can control.
I'm sorry, say it again?
I can start the video.
Okay. Sure thing, go ahead. Yeah, rather than hearing me talk, we're going to have a little introduction video here for you, and I'll jump right in here. So why don't we get that kicked off? Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Smeedle. I am responsible for product management as well as building out our fraud and compliance solutions. Hopefully the video gave you a good sense of what is going on in the environment right now as it relates to big data. There is no question that this is becoming a real problem, not only for our organizations and companies, but for government agencies like yourselves. I thought I might start this with this definition that I got from George Dyson. This particular gentleman does a lot of TED Talks. I don't know if you're familiar with that venue, but he's a historian on technology, and so he has a sarcastic view on what big data means, in that it's like anything else. As soon as the cost of the decision is less than the storing it, you just store everything. It's kind of like throwing stuff in your garage, right? As long as I have space in my garage, I just keep throwing it in there. Why make a decision to throw something out? And thus, a lot of organizations are keeping everything they have, right? So that's not a complete picture of what's going on and why data is growing. The other big avenue here right now is the proliferation of these devices. How many of you guys have a personal computer? Personal computer? Keep your hands up. Now, how many also have a mobile device? A tablet, mobile phone, right? How many of your kids have mobile devices? Right? It's almost everyone in the room. I keep asking this question year after year, and it's funny. A couple years ago, it might have been just a small percentage. To last year, it was maybe half the room. Now almost all of the participants have multiple devices in their household. I'm no different. I think my wife has one, I have one, both my kids have one. I actually got guilted into getting one for my 10-year-old because he was the only kid on the baseball team that didn't have one. The only one. So, you know, and then these kids are basically using and connecting to things like Facebook and Twitter and looking at videos, right? What was it on the the Ellen DeGeneres selfie tweet, right? Got retweeted 26 million times. How many people watch King of Thrones? Yep, King of Thrones, right? So they said the season finale, 1.5 million people downloaded that, which basically took up 2,000 terabytes of space. 2,000 terabytes of space. So it's phenomenal numbers. Now, it's not just mobile devices that basically are causing this revolution right now. It's also things like this. I don't know how many of you guys have these smart watches or these things that are keeping track of your pulse or how many steps you have. I now have a garage door opener that I can open up via Wi-Fi connection from my mobile phone. My wife, God rest her, she went to one of the Samsung's refrigerators that actually stores what's in your refrigerator and will actually order food when it gets low. You ever see these things? Yeah. So, you know, and then there's all kinds of different things. All these things leave a digital footprint, whether we like it or not. They all are basically leaving data all over. And this data is out there for a number of purposes. Now, as it relates to basically SaaS, we look at this from a positive perspective. I know there's always the negatives of having this footprint out there, but from our perspective, we're helping organizations figure out how they can leverage some of this data. So things like, how can I improve customer service? I'll give you an example. It happened to me the other day. My automobile service department called me up and said, hey, your rear brakes need changed. Come bring it up here. My car told the service department that my brakes were getting low and I needed to make an appointment. Pretty nice, huh? Fraud. Right? That's one of the things that as the data grows, the more we learn about people, the more we learn about your normal behavior, we can understand things such as when someone took your card and is buying TVs online with a card not present. Right? We can understand it's not normal behavior for yourself. Things like preventative health care opportunities, proactive equipment maintenance. So there's a whole bunch of opportunities to use this large amounts of data. Now, it doesn't come without challenges though, right? As we kind of alluded to, this data is large, right? They're coming from different devices. They're not all storing it in the same way. So for those of you who've heard the term unstructured data, right? So a lot of these devices are just throwing data out there in its own format. So in order to make sense of it, you have to be able to organize and collect it right. And then it's the variety of it. There's a little known stat that I got from IDC, which is kind of interesting. It said that if you could go and tag every piece of data that's out there in the universe appropriately today, only about a fifth of it would be of value. A fifth. Or 22%. Now, they believe that'll actually increase over the next few years, but a fifth of it. So that means there's a lot of data out there that's really unvaluable, but it's just created. So the question I ask yourselves, and the thing is, how will we find value from big data? How will we basically, as an organization, how will you all use this? So I actually use a metaphor that hopefully you all can relate to, which is, how do we manage data in the physical world? Right? So the first thing you realize is in the physical world, we're talking about, I got a mailbox. Someone drives by once a day and they throw things in my mailbox, right? I then collect all my stuff at a mailbox. I don't know how you do it, but I look at and I spread them across my kitchen table and I basically organize them into one of three buckets. Trash, I don't need to deal with. Things that are urgent, bills, right? Or there's something that I need to make a follow-up on because for any reason I need to call someone about. Or the third category is pieces of information that you want to store for later use. Things might be a registration for your car, or a birth certificate for your new baby, or whatever, right? You get the idea. You put these in three different categories, and you walk through that same paradigm. Well, if you don't do this well, what do you have? Right? Got a whole load of stuff, and then you can never find anything. It's kind of like going back to what George Dyson said. Yeah, it's cheaper not to make the decision, but then you end up with stuff like this, right? And I don't know how many of you guys go in your garage and trying to find that one tool that you haven't used for 5 years, and it's buried under all kinds of things, and you spend more time looking for it. You end up going to Home Depot, buying it, and then finding it like 2 days later, right? I've done that one 100 times. So the point I'm trying to make here is this going through this process is very similar and is very necessary. And you can be overloaded with the amount of data that's coming out and generated today. And so then it translates to, okay, so what's this mean to you in the digital day? What do you mean, how do you basically manage things today with data? So there are 3 different ways, or the 3 different terms I use to kind of represent the same things I just showed you. And that is being able to stream it. So all these data is coming from devices and mobile devices and places, and having the capabilities to read data off sensors, read data off databases, read data in real time. Score it. This is basically SAS's bread and butter. When we talk about scoring, we're talking about analytics and machine learning. This is where our secret sauce, this is what basically differentiates us from everything else. The fact that we have, as Dr. Goodnight said, almost 40 years of experience in analytics itself, in helping you understand what to do with data. And then it goes back to the same thing. Do I throw the data? What do I throw away? What do I keep in memory because I'm going to make some sort of low latency decision or a current decision? And what am I going to store for later use? Right? So examples of this might be of something I might cache. I got a piece of data that said you were trying to buy something online, and I need to block that transaction. So I'm going to stick that there because I'm going to make a low latency decision to block that transaction so that we don't get defrauded. Something I want to store might be we updated your profile about your account. So I need to persist that information so that I know the next time I look you up that you now reside at this address. Okay? And then there's a lot of noise. So it's the same metaphor. Stream it, score it, store it. Right? Just kind of like it was ingesting, analyze, and store from a physical world. So let's talk a little bit about number 2, because like I said, this is SAS's bread and butter. So when we talk about analytics, I guess pretty much everyone here is familiar with probability and statistics, right? Yeah, everyone took this in high school or college course, right? So as Dr. Goodnight alluded to, a lot of the energy and research we've done is from that particular topic, but we have broadened it quite a bit. There are multiple disciplines as relate to analytics, everything from your basic probability to things more investigated like I'm trying to predict a behavior or predict an outcome. That's the term used for data mining or predictive analytics, okay? I'm trying to forecast something. Maybe it's I'm trying to forecast demand for a particular product. There's a whole set of forecasting methods and technologies that do that. I'm trying to figure out how the most optimal way to get a part from point A to point B. Right? Those are more transportation or operations research type problems. And they're typically some sort of, I'm trying to solve some problem subject to some constraints. Okay? Now, more recently, we're adding more algorithms around text analytics. So you may say, what do I mean by text analytics? Things such as if I put in let's just say you do a review on Yelp. I'm going to review a particular restaurant. I had a great experience. I might say that in there. Well, customers in that particular restaurant might want to be able to mine that data to understand what are the attributes that lead one customer to have a positive experience and one to have a negative. So they want to basically take that text, parse it out and tokenize it, understand the sentiment, which is, was it a positive review or a negative review, and then find attributes about it to help them describe. And then that is what they can use to then help address their experience or help improve their particular restaurant. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here that goes on that in a wide variety of disciplines that have a particular value to helping one find use out of large data. More recently, and within the last few, I guess it's about the last few decades, more within the last few years, it's gotten popular again, are technologies called machine learning. Machine learning uses a little bit of all of these types of techniques, but the idea behind it is we use the computer to find the optimum. I'll talk about that in just a second, but there are things such as like neural networks and stuff like that, where you can basically feed it data, let the computer crunch on it, and give you an optimum. And it's been used in a number of different areas successfully. Things like recommenders, So for those of you who have gone on to Amazon and bought a product, and you get a whole list of other products you may like, right? That's all analytics going on in the background. It's basically keeping track of people like yourself, what they bought, if they bought that product, and what other products they bought. And then trying to categorize your behavior and their behavior to give you products that would be similar to what their experience was. Again, what are you doing? You're sifting through a large amounts of purchase behavior on Amazon. You're organizing that in such a pattern. You're throwing it through these algorithms, and you're returning it back in a form that is digestible to the user. It's quite powerful.
A lot of former SAS employees have been going to work for the NSA.
I cannot confirm nor deny that. So there's a whole host of algorithms, and one of the nice things about SAS is, like I said, we've been doing this business for 40 years, and so our, so to speak, toolbox of analytical algorithms is uncompared to it in the market right now. Again, I cannot confirm nor deny. I'll leave that to Paul. So, at any rate, we have a very exhaustive list of different techniques, and it comes from us solving problems in a wide variety of various industries, everything from governments, state and local organizations, to financial services, to insurance, to healthcare, to automotive. We've got a very expansive customer base that are using all kinds of these algorithms. So what I thought I would do is just explain a couple of customer scenarios that have and how they're using SAS, so you can get a feel for kind of the power that it brings. How many of you guys have a credit card? Pretty much everyone, right? Yeah, all right. So HSBC is, as of 2012, the largest bank and financial institution to the globe. It has just under, I think, 100 million customers in 85 countries. I think its net assets are like $2.7 trillion, right? It's quite a large organization. There is a lot that goes on in between you swiping your card and you getting either an approve, a refer, or a decline. Now, for what you don't know, what a refer means is if you swipe your card and the issuing bank is a little bit questionable, they'll refer back to the merchant, and the merchant can actually make a decision whether or not to let that purchase go through or not. So that's why there's three outcomes. The issuing bank can say, I decline you, I approve you, or I'll let the merchant basically figure it out, which is a refer. Okay? So before we were working with them, or as you can think about this problem, between this swipe and you getting that response within 2 seconds, 2-3 seconds, there's a lot of things that go on. The information from your card gets sent to the acquiring bank. The acquiring bank, which is associated with the merchant, sends that across the Visa or MasterCard network. The issuing bank, the one that actually issued you your card, then accepts it, combines that with the information it knows about you, the customer, what your balance is, what credit you have left, what purchases you have, where you live, all those types of things. And it'll takes that all together, and within 50 milliseconds, not 50 seconds, 50 milliseconds, it has to make that decision. And then it sends it all the way back. So when we got involved in working with HSBC, what they were doing was they were only using analytics on a 10th of the card swipes. A 10%. So what they were doing in order to deal with the other 9/10 was that they would say, if I approved Paula the last time she swiped her card, well, then she's approved automatically. Yeah. So what do you think that basically, how that impacted their fraud? Right? Yeah, it had a big impact on the fraud because they wouldn't pick up on things that happened. If someone took your card ID and started running it, they wouldn't know about it till potentially that 10th swipe because they were doing a lot of this stuff out of cycle. Now, with SAS and our algorithms and our platform, every single transaction goes through our analytics. Every single time you swipe your card, it is run through a set of algorithms, a set of neural networks that it is basically making that decision and getting a recommendation back from the issuing bank that it can approve or decline. Right? Does it all within 50 milliseconds. It's quite impressive. Another example. Again, if I'm boring you guys, just let me know. We can keep passing on. How many of you guys have gone to Harris Teeter? I think they're at Food Lion. Well, I think they're at 27,000 shopping or food grocery stores. Or at any of, I think, 7,000 pharmacies. If you have checked out and you get a coupon, and you see that little coupon machine, next time go look on the side of it. It's probably going to say Catalina. If it hasn't, it probably does. What Catalina does is they are in the business of helping products market their product. And so they produce coupons for the various products that the store sells. And of course, you can imagine they get paid by the redemption. So if you use their coupon, the more they use it, the more they get. They collect data, like I said, I think it's 140 million different customers they have data on. And I think in 1 week, it's like 1 trillion transactions that go through their systems. And so what they're trying to do is look at all your behavior and everything you're purchasing to figure out, okay, if you buy a lot of, I don't know, Coca-Cola products, maybe we need to refer to you some sort of chips or some sort of dip or whatnot. So they're going through that analysis of figuring out almost market basket, which is what do you buy things together, and then based on what you buy together to incent you to buy something maybe of a different, some other brand. And so they're now able to use us, again, to sift through all this terabytes and terabytes of data and be able to run these models every 60 seconds to be able to give the customer a coupon that is more likely to be redeemed. And actually, through the use of this, the redemption rates went from 10% to 25%. Pretty exhaustive. Now, the last one is something that's near and dear to my heart. So we talk about the Internet of Things, right? And we're talking about collecting data from all these different sensors. So I'm going to date myself. I went to school at Carnegie Mellon in 1990. And so there was a park that was called Schenley Park. And see this big blue-looking thing here? Well, that big blue van would drive through the park at like 5-10 miles an hour with no one at this wheel. You see, back then, they were trying to figure out how they could basically have a self-driving car. And so what they were doing was, you see these big things on top that look like big cameras and monitors? They were. So they were basically taking an analog picture of the street. They were converting that analog picture into a digital representation. They were training the vehicle based on the position of the wheel and the lines on the road to stay in between those two lines. So literally, and I kid you not, if you were running in there at odd hours, maybe early in the morning or late at night, depends on, you would see this thing creeping up on you because it could only go 5 miles an hour because the computing at that point in time wasn't fast enough to let the car go that fast. And it would creep up and you would hear it like hit the curb and do all kinds of crazy things behind you. So it would scare the bejesus out of you. Why I bring this up is this is another application, and I don't know for those of you who have a newer car, but my wife wanted to buy this Acura MDX, and now they offer this thing called Lane Assist. Lane Assist does exactly this. It is basically taking a camera on top of the vehicle. It's now a high-def camera. It turns that image of the road, into ones and zeros. It runs a neural network, and it will take over and take the lane of the wheel and move it if you start drifting off the road. Right? Application of analytics in the big data, fast-moving environment. So you're going to expect to see more of this type of thing. And I think this was just, I think Acura just introduced this either this year or last year, right? I don't know, I just came across it the other day and I thought it was kind of interesting. But when you break it apart, that's what they're doing, right? That's what they're using big data, because you can imagine that video image and all those, turning every pixel into a digital representation and training it on between the lines and where the steering wheel needs to be. And then what they're doing is they're only making actions when necessary. All the rest of the data is thrown away, right? Back to my point. So SAS has experience with a lot of different customers, both government, financial services, manufacturing, hospitality, in a lot of these types of areas. And there's a lot of use cases that we can get into and talk to you about how we're using analytics with big data. But I did want to leave you with this, in that what we're doing to help we're in the business of helping our customers make smarter decisions. And in today's day and age, what that means and what we're doing to do that is A, we're building platforms that are going to enable our customers in order to deal with the large amounts of data and the speed at which data is coming in. 2, we're adding to our analytic portfolio. We're adding new methods, new algorithms, in order to basically take advantage of the most recent research. And then 3, we are continuing to add to our human capital, our services, bringing experience from industries, bringing experience from the application of these technologies to help us solve problems. So those 3 things are basically what we're doing in order to help our customers make smarter decisions and take advantage of the big data world. So with that, I will leave it for questions.
Given an example
So you want to jump up and grab this one? Because you're probably more familiar. I know a couple. Oh, is that?
The next agenda digs right into state government use.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so I want to give you just a preview of all the other areas, but then we're doing specific things around, a lot of it is around fraud or welfare, public safety issues, those types of things. Okay, well, that's good. Okay. Sure.
Joe Zilka and Marie Lohman are going to talk to you about
Yes, sir.
the use of analytics and big data in state government. Lots of use case examples. I love the questions. This is what we want to have here. Please break in as they're talking. You guys at the top of mind. This is about educating everyone in the room. So thank you very much. Joe, Marie.
Thanks, Kevin. Again, my name is Joe Zilka. I work here at SAS, obviously. I've been in the state and local government practice for about 14 years, all in government, so I've been supporting SAS's use in government for that long. Marie's been here longer than I, actually, if you believe that. So hard. But anyway, we want to talk a little bit about what we see in terms of analytics and the trends in government space. Back when I started, it tended to be around the Big Bang approach in government, right? Everything was data warehouse. Programs were trying to create data warehouses to consolidate data. When I first started, data warehouse tended to be a dirty word, right? There was an oft-cited statistic that we used that 8 out of 10 data warehouse projects failed to meet expectations, primarily because they didn't incorporate the end users and how people were going to actually leverage the data that they were collecting. So again, a lot of mistakes were made. I think the industry, states, as well as vendors learned a lot from those experiences. Then came the world of the ERPs, right? The enterprise resource planning applications, right? These applications are meant to kind of help organizations, departments run more efficiently, right? Their day-to-day businesses run much more efficiently. 3 years and 8-9 figures later, right? They turned out to be very good at what they did, and I think government did become more efficient. But there was, again, that Big Bang approach was something that I think organizations and governments are looking to move away from. As we look to trying to help our citizens, right, as we try to do things more efficiently, we look to analytics and how we can certainly promote those efficiencies. So in the next 30 minutes or so, Marie and I are going to kind of go through our experiences and some of the trends that we see. I think I've got about 3 here on the bullet points that we'll talk about. Marie will probably talk about some case studies as we go through. Enterprise data sharing. What had kind of drawn me to the government space initially was the fact that the government has so many different lines of business. Okay, and I'll call them lines of business. The big conglomerates, GE, Unilever, P&G, right, all those big companies, they do a lot of things, but they do, I think it's pretty narrow compared to what government does, right? It's a very diverse industry, if you will, monopoly actually, right? So we do a lot of things around education, right? We do some finance. We do things around healthcare, mental health, delivery of human and social services, things about economic development, natural resources, criminal justice, public safety, just to name a few, right? I challenge you to find any industry, any company that does things as diverse as government, right? So the point here is that there's a lot of data that is being collected. We saw in the last presentation that Ryan gave us all the different types of information that devices are collecting. Government organizations, government agencies are collecting a heck of a lot of information that is not being leveraged. It's probably being leveraged in the department level and in the agencies, and that's very successful, and they're very good at it. But where we're starting to see a lot of value is the sharing of that information across the enterprise. How do I understand what services a child is receiving? What services do they need? What are the best combination of services that I might provide to this child so they can achieve the outcome that we're targeting, right? So, you know, we're really breaking down those silos, the departmental and programmatic silos, with this data to use it in a fashion that's going to be beneficial for our constituents, right? And in the old days, you know, I think there was some hesitation for organizations to share data. Department of Revenue seemed to be the worst in my experience. But again, you know, the problems about sharing data tend to vary from culture, data security issues, regulations and statutes may prevent them from sharing data. But I think we're finding in government that those barriers are being broken down, and they're being broken down quite efficiently and effectively so that we can start to leverage analytics to get a holistic view of the individuals we're concerned with, a full view of the businesses that are operating in our state, our constituents, children, healthcare providers, any kind of service providers, benefit recipients. The more we know about these individuals, the better we can prescribe services or interact with them with government. Marie, did you have a few examples you want to cite here?
Sure, Joe. Let me step right in. Was it Dolores? Yeah. I really appreciated your question, so thank you for asking it early on. And I do want to reiterate and encourage anyone in the audience to ask as many questions as you can. Joe and I are pretty darn good on the fly, and if we don't have it right, we can make it up real quick and make it sound like we have it good on the fly. I'm just kidding. But we do want to share with you real examples of where analytics comes into play. I think one of the challenges is when we talk about analytics and technology, it can become highly complex very, very quickly. And what we'd like to accomplish in this session and throughout the course of your time here is share with you those real-world examples so that you can personalize them, take them home, and make sense of them and how you can apply them in your local areas as well. I've been with SAS a while, and I'm responsible for our global government programs. And lots of times, well, we may look to places domestically where we can replicate and take advantage of different types of projects we've been working on. There's quite a bit going on overseas, too, that we can look to and get best use cases and best management practices, those types of things. So I encourage you to ask those questions so we can pull some of that into the context so that you can take it away with you. I'll also add that I sit on the other side of the table as well as a council person. There's someone here for Texas. It was yourself, right? I'm actually in the city of BK, city council now, and the things that are presented during our council sessions so many times, I think, oh, this is such a great example of how analytics can play in this area, in this area, in this area. So in this particular example, to reiterate what Joe said, we've got silos everywhere, information all over the place. And if we can pull it all together and raise the conversation to allow us to make better decisions, that's the ultimate goal. An example I wanted to share and related to this was a project here in the state of North Carolina. It's referred to as CJ LEADS, which stands for the Criminal Justice Law Enforcement Automated Data Services. And there are some CJ LEAD experts in this room. And so if I misspeak, please step in and augment what it is that I'm about to say. But unfortunately, this was an example that started with a tragedy. Eve Carson, the student body president for UNC in March 2008, was murdered. And when the two individuals were apprehended and taken into custody, it was also determined that one of those individuals was tied to another murder case at the prior January of a Duke engineering student. To make things even that much more tragic, both of those individuals had pending violations of their parole and should have never been out on parole to begin with. They should have been incarcerated at that point in time that those murders were committed. So it was a horrible tragedy of which this CJ LEADS project grew. And the state of North Carolina used an opportunity to look at data and share information across their criminal justice and public safety system, whether it be sentencing information, parole information, arrest records, those types of things, and provide that all to offer a 360-degree view or a holistic view of an individual so that when an incident happens and an individual is in front of a magistrate, that magistrate can make decisions right then with all the information in front of them to decide whether or not someone should remain incarcerated or someone should be released. This system was in place for many years now, and it's grown over the years to incorporate more data, whether it's Department of Motor Vehicles data. I believe now they're including boat vessel registrations, parks and wildlife, licensing information, those types of things. So what might have started as a smaller project to get a snapshot, if you will, of an individual has grown to much more to get a holistic picture of an offender. And this has all been grown from the idea of data sharing across multiple departments throughout a government entity so that better decisions can be made at the point that a decision needs to be generated. You don't have time to go and pull all that information together on an individual basis.
And the Wake County Clerk of Court will
Thank
be
you.
on tomorrow to talk in detail about the role of the legislature in compelling that project.
Does anyone have any questions about that particular project? Yeah.
I've got one for you. Some of the concerns that we've heard are access to that information. Is there a way that all they can do is read it? They can't enter or change the information that they're seeing through cross-discipline?
Yes, what you have said is correct. There are so many experts in that back of the room. Does someone want to address that a little bit more concisely than the answer is yes, that is correct. You cannot go in and change that information, and there are limited views to individual titles that can go in and view that. But does somebody want to address that more specifically? Okay. Thank you. That's a great question.
Very good. If you do speak, just press the button on the microphone right here. I think they're kind of getting this information, and it makes it easier to hear as well. So if you do speak, press the button for us. There's a Department of Public Social Services at the county level that's integrating data across sources to help some homeless adults, right? There's a lot of services that are being provided. They want to understand what services might be potentially duplicative. Again, what services do we think are going to be the best combination to get these people into a home so they could get on SSI income from the feds, right? So it's just another example of integrating data across the different sources at a county level here. But again, it's all about social services. The state of Illinois is embarking on their framework. They're creating a framework of seven different departments are consolidating data to create that holistic view of an individual in order to be more efficient and get the right set of services they're going to deliver. Again, there initially were some barriers, right? I think that it's more cultural than it is technical, right? I think from a technology perspective, you can get to any data you want. Any integrator, any vendor can probably make it happen. Any agency can make that happen. But again, I think that the understanding that that data is so valuable and so powerful, and it's being, there's some buy-in at the top that, we certainly need to make this data available so we can be more efficient and make those effective decisions that are going to impact people on a day-to-day basis. Analytical centers of government excellence. What I've kind of seen out there over the last few years in my visits and conversations with a lot of different departments and agencies is how they use analytics. Analytics is not a magic wand where I take data, I put it in, I wave my wand and say, presto, there it goes. There's my answer. I like to think of it more as a group of sharp, pointy sticks. In the last presentation, you talked about, Ryan talked about all the different analytical techniques that we can apply to solve complex business problems, right? How do I get a package from LA to Boston absolutely positively overnight, right? That's a logistics problem. There's a lot of math involved, right? There's a lot of solutions to that problem. There's a lot of constraints to that problem. And how do I do it at the best cost? The same thing applies in government in a lot of different areas, in service delivery. So the point there is that there's a lot of folks in government throughout organizations that know how to do that. Some departments have more of those folks than others, okay, admittedly. Again, some departments are very good. They have a lot of smart analytic people, and I'm not trying to sell those people short. But there are a lot of organizations that just don't have that analytical capability. It's math, I don't pretend like I know a lot about analytics. I know enough to get by, right? But we get the really smart people in the room to be able to solve those complex problems. Organizations are looking to consolidate that pool of resources, right? Let's take those smart analytical data scientists, if you will, one of the new terms you probably hear out there, and they're creating this analytical center of excellence where business departments can bring their problem to these analysts and find ways to solve those problems. How do we generate insights? How do we become more efficient? Let's collaborate and share what we know about the information as well as the techniques that we're using to solve these problems. Ultimately, we become more agile and more precise in the information that we're providing and the decisions that we can make. So again, I mentioned analytics and math. There's a lot of different techniques that are available. These people love to collaborate. We mentioned some user conferences. Dr. Goodnight's mentioned a user conference earlier. We get 3,500, 4,000 people at a user conference every year of how to apply analytics across different businesses. Again, I think organizations are really looking to find ways that they can leverage the analytical talent to solve the complex problems. And I think the city of New York has done something similar as well.
They have. So to share another example, we'll talk about the Center for Innovation through Data Intelligence out of the state of New York. The mayor's office, and this is a project with the Department of Health and Human Services, they actually put together this center of analytics, if you will, where they pulled their data scientists together to answer some really tough questions, number one. But number two, it was also an environment where they could come up with questions to ask of the data. Keep in mind, folks that are very analytically minded love the challenge of answering a question, but they also love coming up with new questions to throw at the data and see what might come back. And those are the fun pieces of the puzzle when you find out things that you didn't even necessarily know to ask of your data. Those are the real nuggets that can change the game completely. And in New York, they're doing this quite a bit. If we talk about this particular project with Health and Human Services, you've got lots of different departments that make up this entire group of organizations. One of the challenges that they had, or one of the problems that they wanted to look at further was when they had children that are in the foster care program and aged out at 18 and they were ready to go, there were different programs and services that were offered to them. Some took advantage of those programs and offerings, some did not. There was a program, I think it was through the Good Shepherd Services, where when these children turned 18, they could move into this housing environment where different programs were offered based on the characteristics of those individuals coming into the program. So they could essentially think of it like offering certain programs that we know you probably will benefit from and certain programs that we probably know you will better benefit from. And then you had a population of individuals that were 18 that aged out of the program that did not go into this housing environment. Everybody, it sounds like a good idea. Do you throw it up as that was a good idea I had at the time? Do we keep funding it? We don't know. And so the Center for Innovation through Data Intelligence applied analytics to answering those questions, following those youths who aged out and just went into the world on their own versus following those youths who went into this next housing step where certain services were tailored for their individual characteristics. And there was an astounding difference between the children who aged out through the programs that were offered and those who chose to go out on their own, not only in terms of incarcerations, but also in terms of employment, et cetera. So there was analytical and empirical evidence that showed these programs are effective, these programs are working. The next step to that is, now that you've shown these programs are effective and are working, it's much easier to secure funding to continue those effective programs and services. Without empirical and analytical evidence to support those, we're kind of doing an acid test in the wind. Does it feel good? Yes. Does it sound good? Yes. But if you can also say, and I know it's working because X, Y, and Z, it's so much more powerful. And that's a really good example of at Center for Analytics changing the course of how decisions are being made, not only at the policy level, but also downstream when they continue expanding programs and whatnot.
Thanks, Marie. One of the things I think that these folks that really like solving these types of problems is seeing that information being used. And a lot of the organizations that I talk to they're looking to find the best way to operationalize these analytics, right? There's a lot of research. You hear statistics and modeling and a lot of research organizations that do studies and try to find results, but how do we leverage that on a day-to-day basis, right? So these organizations are looking to operationalize that. And I think these, getting these folks together along with the business users help us understand and help us try to find ways that we can actually use this data on a day-to-day basis to make those decisions.
And if I can also add one more thing, when you think of a center of analytics, you can think of a brick and mortar building that is a thing, or you can think of a virtual team of folks working together where data is being shared and analytical questions are being answered of data across a bunch of different environments. So it can be two kind of things. It can be a virtual environment, or it can be a building where you have staff that are dedicated to that particular function. Yes? Mm-hmm. Only if it's an easy question.
Okay. Do you guys keep publicly available bibliography somewhere of the output and the usefulness of some of that project that you just described in New York State is a personal interest to me. I sit on a quit improvement project for foster care.
Yes,
I'd like
ma'am,
to
we
see
sure
what they
do.
learn.
In a couple of different ways. We have materials that support an entire variety of audiences. So we have white papers for a more technical person who wants to get in-depth information. We have what would be described as a customer success story, if you will, and some of those are in the packets of different engagements. And then we also have, and I think this is kind of the best of both of the worlds, where different states will set up the information and the outcomes from these programs and make them publicly available so they can showcase the work that they're doing. That, to me, is the most valuable, right? It can be a vendor-neutral thing, but you've got a state that sets those up. For example, CJ Leads, there's a website set up dedicated to that project on the North Carolina site where you can go and look, and they have a whole section on catching criminals that's constantly updated with different wins or successes or outcomes of that particular program. To follow up with you further, Dolores, on that particular project, we can give you additional information. That was just one example of a lot of different things they're doing at CIDI that are so, the real world examples where you're truly changing the lives of an individual. And that, to me, is my personal draw to even working in government. It makes a difference on the ground at an individual basis. We'll get that to you for sure. We also have on the project foster care kids that we did in Virginia that would be
And I think I'll add that tomorrow in the breakout sessions, I think there's going to be some more individual detail. I know we've got one on fraud, waste, and abuse. We've got one on child welfare. There's a couple other sessions on healthcare as well. I know we haven't mentioned healthcare here too much today, government healthcare, but we have a session on that as well. I think Esri has a session as well. So I think that there will be some more additional detail. We'd be happy to talk more about it either later tonight or we can certainly get you the information. So last point that I think I see, and maybe Marie would add some later, but I think this rounds out my experiences. Earlier we talked, I mentioned the Big Bang approach and those big giant projects, but the trend is to be more agile and iterative while maintaining our strategic vision, from the state's perspective. Organizations can't wait 3 years while they lose tens of millions of dollars to fraud, waste, and abuse. Or worse yet, a child runs the risk of being abused or neglected. These things have to happen very quickly. States have become more receptive to outsourcing those types of solutions to other organizations. Some just can't get off the ground that quickly. It varies from state to state, quite honestly. But I think that some of the barriers to outsourcing are being overcome. Data security was an issue. I'm not letting data out of my state because I don't know who has it. Well, I think this is part of the testament that we're pretty secure here. And a lot of vendor organizations are. They have to be. They can't run the risk of that data getting out. Whether it's credit card data from a commercial perspective or we're talking HIPAA data, right? I think there's healthcare data, Medicaid claims data, information about criminal justice, public safety that vendors are hosting for states so that they can get their solutions up and running and apply analytics at a much quicker pace than what they might be able to do internally. And again, that tide is really changing from, no, I have to do everything in-house and it's going to take me a lot more time than I can, pay people to do it for me. And quite honestly, from an IT perspective, the hardware, the grid, all the things that Dr. Goodnight talked about get applied to help states solve those problems. Again, it's just been a great model, whether we're applying analytics, whether we're deploying a fully implemented solution, providing some visualization or data presentation layers to the customers. And again, it helps them operationalize those analytics very quickly, right? Let's risk score Medicaid providers that might be committing fraud, right? I can log in and see a list and find out the reasons why they scored so highly, and I can do something about it. Let's risk score the children and say, hey, this particular child has a risk of being abused or neglected because the mother moved in with a guy who just got out of jail for domestic violence, right? That's relevant. That's actionable information that can be delivered very quickly. And again, the data sharing is always there, right? But that's being overcome. And states, again, are realizing that they need to share data, they're realizing that they need to apply analytics, and they realize they need to do it quickly. And these are some of the trends I think that I've seen over the last several years related to government. Examples would be state of Kentucky has taken an enterprise approach to fraud, waste, and abuse, right? They're outsourcing some of that as well. Who else we got? State of North Carolina with CJ Leeds. State of Michigan, enterprise fraud as well. Louisiana, doing some projects in Florida, right, related to child welfare. South Carolina, Paul has got the list, so it's great. Again, the stories are endless, and I always stumble upon a new story, and I forget about everything that happened a few months ago.
And I think the key here is, Joe used, agile, iterative, strategic. I'm going to say this. You can keep your stuff, you can put your stuff somewhere else, or you can do both. We can host it for you, you can host it at your site, we can remote manage service it. This data scientist and the concept of analytics can seem overwhelming, but there are folks out there that can do that on your behalf. If there's an HR issue, you don't have those types of people in your environment, that's okay. We do it all the time on behalf of our state and local government customers. So from a cloud perspective, we can put things hosted in a cloud, we can host it in a building over here, we can host it at your site and remote managed services. Lots of different options, incredibly flexible to meet your particular environments. It's no longer a barrier, I think.
Right, and again, I think that collaboration is key.
Now we've got
states are sharing.
too, Joe, the words.
States are sharing, all the institutional knowledge that people that work in the departments and agencies at the state level have a lot of information of how they should do their job. Analytics provides another piece of information that helps them make the right decisions. We've got the folks that know how to use the sharp, pointy sticks, right? Let us help you.